Hey there, welcome to Niver Niver Land, Season 2, Episode 2. We're going to be talking to, and I just spoke with, and you'll be listening to Dean Phillips today, Congressman Dean Phillips. And the reason Dean was here is because he saw the episode of Niver Niver Land where I mentioned to you all that restaurants need help. So guess what? This congressman reached back to me. He saw a clip and he reached back and said, hey, let's chat. So today on Niver Niver Land, a politician, also a person I've looked up to for a lot of years. This gentleman has provided pathways through his entrepreneurial spirit. I got to meet with him with some friends of ours, and though we didn't end up being in business together, he definitely pointed us in a good direction. And I think what you'll find after you listen to this conversation is Dean is still trying to point us in the right direction. So with us today, Niver Niver Land, Congressman Dean Phillips.
I'm into collecting old Twin Cities menus.
Oh, really?
Oh, and I like old Charlie's and Harry's, the Nankin, old original Nankin menu, the hotels like the Leamington and the Waikiki Room.
You steal menus?
I didn't say no. I didn't. No, don't do that. No, I acquire them.
Yeah.
And
you could ask
there's
me.
There's this thing called the internets.
Yeah. Oh, yes. No, absolutely. I have a few Pronto Ristorante menus that I actually did take at the end, and they're kind of leather bound and have these really lovely elastic inserts where you put like the month, the region that we were featuring that month, whatever.
Oh, I love it.
And those, these are good memories for me too. I have some from the Bellagio when I worked there as well. And
you worked at Bellagio?
I opened the Bellagio with my wife. We were there for the opening. It was
I didn't even know that.
Crazy. Back in the day.
Wow. My most recent acquisition is a fork from the Hotel Nicollet, which appears to be late 1890s. Which maybe should be like BYOS, bring your own silverware night, and I'll come.
I love that stuff. Gavin Kaysen's got a thing for spoons too. You know, it's it's in us.
Spoons.
He does.
I like little spoons. Anyway, I digress.
Me too. Dean Phillips is here, Congressman Phillips. May I call you Dean?
Please.
And this is Niver Niver Land. This is kind of it seems like this all happened so fast, but really, Dean reached out to us on Twitter and said, hey, let's talk about some restaurant stuff. It just so happens that Gleam Tower Media and my producer, Matt, were able to hook us up with this time. So I'm just really appreciative that in such quick fashion that we could sit down and talk about some things, Dean. It's really nice to have you here.
It's great to be at your table.
This is called Niver Niver Land. It is a fantastical place. I'm sure that you're sensing it already.
I see leprechauns and angels. And
cool. That is the effect we're going for here. Yes.
It's working.
I'm going to talk you into so many things now that you're wooed. And then it's cool because I get to kind of go back over my memories of times that we actually were together for a few minutes.
Sure.
Before your now political life. One of them was with my good friends Nick Kosovich and Dan Oski, and it was during the Town Talk Diner period.
Yeah.
And we had this bright idea. We were thinking that you would be interested in helping us create a line of tonics.
Yeah.
And you are so gracious with your time and with us and with your level of interest. And you just were so helpful for us to you gave us pathways, even though we didn't end up doing the idea. You ended up giving us a pathway with these conversations to another thing. I really believe this. I was able to give Dan and Nick the confidence to put something together, and then we were able to ask for a meeting, and then we got to the meeting, and then you showed us maybe what we needed to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I remember that visit. Mm-hmm.
And then, but that's a pathway. And look at now. Dan Oski got Tattersall going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what an impressive thing they've done there.
Sure
I really think that began right around that time when we were able to sit with you and have that spark. You can meet with people that can help you get things done.
I love that. love that.
So thank you so
I'm
much.
a big fan of all you guys.
It's
so.
really freaking cool. And then Nick, of course, ran off to be some cocktail genius, has this place, Mr. Paul's Supper Club in Edina, which I'm
Can't
not
wait
yet.
to try it. Can't wait.
I can't wait
Yeah.
either. And it's fun and it looks frivolous. I hope Nick hopefully is keeping his shirt on behind the bar. He did take it off a few times when it got hot behind the
It would help
Sunset
business
bar.
if he kept it on.
So hopefully he's fully clothed at the supper club, but we'll see. And then again, Dean was able to come through with another friend, a mutual friend of ours, Hal Lieberman.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you so much. And I had another idea. I had taken this Mucci's thing, and I was like, oh, shoot, dude, like I need another angle on business. I need a way, because even then, this is 5-6 years ago, restaurants were becoming harder and harder to operate in a profitable fashion. You can do it well, but to make money in it's very difficult. And I think that's gotten harder progressively.
Oh, we'll talk about it.
So then now, from there, I was like, okay, I need a second avenue so that I can get some revenue for, maybe retirement. Because, I don't know if it's going to be the restaurants anymore, like I'm trying. I know this is me talking a lot. I am here with you, and I am so excited. But I had to tell you the inspirations. And so anyway, I pitched you this Mucci's frozen pizza idea, and you looked at the packaging, and you gave me another pathway, another angle on things. And so
I remember that pizza. I mean, I literally remember eating that pizza too.
Thanks.
Meatball pizza.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember it.
I really appreciate it. And then when I heard you were running, I was like, all right, this is totally going to be a pathway for things that I, see in common with you to hopefully get done. So, I mean, how freaking inspiring to sit. I'm not trying to every guest that comes here, I kind of blow them up a little bit, but I'm not trying. I just feel that way. And so thanks a lot. And I think now today we're here for a subject that's, obviously you saw some of my remarks about what restaurants need.
Sure.
And so you reached out. Like I didn't reach to you exactly. I was asking people to reach out to their people and get them involved. But you're here today.
Yeah, because you're a risk taker, and I honor you. And every name you just mentioned, that's what makes the country remarkable. Our community so wonderful. The space in which we're sitting isn't just a restaurant; it's the cultural and social fabric of the country. And every one we lose, and better than anybody, we're losing them. Is a point of sadness for me and should be for the whole country. And one of my missions in Congress is to remind people, if there's no bridge to be built between Democrats and Republicans relative to entrepreneurs and risk takers and people that enliven our communities and create jobs and risk a lot in so doing, if there's not that bridge, there is no bridge. And I feel strongly that I've got to be that voice. And that's what I'm here for.
That's amazing. Because, I've been using the term bridge too. I definitely feel like, my story is, thank God PPP came the way it did and as fast as it did. Excellent work. Sure, it felt maybe a little screwy.
Yeah.
Sure, a system that big and that fast is going to have its peculiarities and problems. But without that PPP, I would not be here. I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you because it would be too late.
I'm glad.
It would be too late. That is no bullshit. That is serious. Dinette would be gone, Mucci's St. Paul would be gone, and Trattoria Mucci is gone. Yeah. But
I'm sorry.
It's fine. This is like I said, this is how it goes, right? We can't save everything. That the attempt to, with good intent to do the right thing. Those same people that everybody goes out to enjoy restaurants. Everybody on whatever socioeconomic level you're on, everybody goes out to these restaurants, and you can see with the proliferation of the Food Network and all of these things, how important it really is to people. But not everybody's hurting, Dean, and no. So you could look in on a business that is kind of a risky business to begin with, right? And then you're looking, we're looking to the government to help us, with it's kind of a risky investment, but is the part of the culture and the fabric, is that enough? Is that enough reason for everybody to say, hey, we need to keep restaurants like this? Or how do the majority of people feel about this, really?
Well, Tim, I think there's a consensus that we had to do something, which we did. I mean, and that was for the most part, a bipartisan desire. Not to enrich people, but gosh knows, when the government hands out, or distributes billions of dollars, some will be wasted, some will end up in the hands of people who don't deserve it or misuse it. But it's going to save a lot of people. And this was the Paycheck Protection Program. This was to keep people employed, to allow you to pay the people that makes this possible. Nobody can run a restaurant on his or her own. We know that. Is cultural and social need enough? Probably not. And that's why my job is to create this bridge between the humane elements, the social elements, the cultural elements, and the economic elements. And I would argue it's a whole lot less expensive to keep people employed than it is to pay them when they're not.
Absolutely.
And that's and
with a purpose.
And with a purpose, exactly. And the notion was to keep the lights on. And many of us thought this would end sooner than it has, the pandemic. Knock on wood, we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm of the opinion we have to do a little bit more because Omicron changed things quickly. Anybody that relies on public gathering, and restaurants are the perfect example. What is a restaurant but for the public? That's why we go out. Anybody can eat at home. We want to be with people.
Yeah.
And a pandemic makes that all but impossible. So I'm working hard right now on trying to refill the Restaurant Revitalization Fund because about 270,000 applied, 100,000 restaurants received it, and 170,000 didn't, which means by definition, government picked a winner and a loser, oftentimes across the street from each other. And I think it's a responsibility for the United States government in particular to give people a chance, keep the lights on, allow them to live to see another day, because the economy will come back. But that's our job, and that's why I'm working so hard on it.
Well, I can say thanks for that. I can also say that let's say Trattoria Mucci was able to receive those funds, which it was able to. It just did not. If it had, the amount of money that was coming to it would have saved the restaurant. Yeah. So it would have saved the restaurant. It would have saved the jobs. It would have saved a lot of where that corner, Bryant Lake Bowl's been there. There's a lot of, heritage on Lake Street worth protecting there. And it would have kept the restaurant there in a hard time for Uptown.
And that's why we need to do it.
And right.
And I wish we had sooner.
Because in a way, that is it is a prop up, right? But it also keeps the lights on in between other places. So there's not these dark spots, these empty areas. And some people are doing fine right now. I get it. I'm really worried about downtowns.
I am too, especially ours. I mean, both here where we are right now in Minneapolis.
Really hard. And so if people aren't back in the offices, you know what I get? And I get it, but people come in the restaurant and they look at you and they say, glad you made it. We're so glad you made it. And I'm like, to today? Me too. I'm glad I made it to today. Because tomorrow or whatever comes down, I just don't know. And so I think people, if they're able to resume a little bit more of their life, which obviously we've all sacrificed a lot of these good times, but you get some of that back and you think everything's okay. It's really hard for a restaurant guy who's never had to ask for help, who just by who I am has a certain amount of privilege, and I recognize that. I feel weird asking for money, but doggone it, I would have been able to really help people. And I think that's why it hurts so bad that it didn't work out. That it didn't work out is just, it's okay.
Well,
Timing wasn't right.
We're going to keep trying, and I remind everybody that it is a chicken and the egg. If we want to see the downtowns come back, I mean, going through Minneapolis right now is it's painful.
Yeah.
It's painful for anybody. I'm not as familiar with how St. Paul is faring, but at least Minneapolis, it's a chicken and the egg. Without restaurants, why would people come downtown? If we're going to restore, communal, gathering and public gathering and people out in the streets and enjoying each other's company, you need magnets. And what better magnets do we have in our midst than restaurants? That's why it's so important. I think it's foundational. That's why I'm so focused on the RRF and preserving restaurants. Yeah. Because without them, what is a city? What is a community? What is a street corner? And that's why I'm so intent on doing so. Not to mention my family. We're sitting literally like 2 blocks from where my great-grandfather, Yale Johnson, opened Johnson's Market on Wabasha, where Lawson Commons is now. My family's been in the food and beverage business my whole life.
Forever.
Not necessarily the restaurant business, but grocery store,
connected.
and then of course the spirits business, and then Talenti Gelato, and now I own a couple coffee shops, and I have such reverence, not just for the food and the creation and the artistry, but it's the gathering. And what does our country need more than anything, by the way? This isn't just about preserving businesses. This is about preserving what I would consider the only space and place left where people of all kinds of backgrounds and perspectives and geographies and politics and races and religions come together. It's one of the beautiful things about the Minnesota State Fair. And why do you come to the State Fair? Well, maybe for the haunted house, but I would say for the food. And that's what's so magical about restaurants, and that's why we got to do this. And that's why every day I'm in Washington, I'm talking to my friends on both sides of the aisle about the need to do it. And there are 434 others. It takes a lot of work, but we're making progress.
That's fantastic.
Keep the faith, but
obviously I'm in agreement with you with like the romantic, notion of restaurants. Also, like the people associated with restaurants are affected by this too. So it's not just the restaurant community, but those people who are delivering and farmers and there's just so many other aspects of this that it touches a lot of people.
Well, they're the hubs. A restaurant is a social hub. It's a cultural hub. It's an economic hub. And you talk about farmers. It literally, a restaurant brings together just about every industry when you really think about it. Every vendor, international. The food you serve. Yeah. Sometimes it comes from a mile away, which is beautiful. Sometimes it comes from 1,000 miles away. But the jobs created by one restaurant aren't just the ones inside its 4 walls. Far more expansive. Think about the distributors and the importers and the producers and the farmers and the packagers and the purveyors. It's a beautiful ecosystem. Yeah. So that's why we got to keep the end of that ecosystem alive. Yeah. And that's what we're intending to do.
Well, and I think that's important. Obviously there are a lot of new opportunities that I see, through this difficulty. I am a optimist at heart, and I while I don't necessarily want for myself to open up another restaurant right now, I know how important it is to sustain the beautiful ones that we do have, but also, provide a foundation where new restaurants can, keep going too. We have to
fertilize.
Just enliven the community and fertilize and just keep it, going. I understand that there is some till going on and there's some new new chances after a place closes and we see things regenerate. I think the people in our industry are very productive. I think we do add. I think we're amazing people in general. Like we're people want to be around.
We're amazing, yes.
In general,
yes,
I just say
totally
we're here to entertain you. Like we desire your company. Like we and then the level of service that we care about who rolls in. And I really am glad that you mentioned the point. I think a restaurant can disarm the best of us, because at the table we're kind of even and equal, sharing in a meal, breaking bread, sitting next to somebody we may not even agree with, or we maybe are watching our tongues while we're sitting next to them, but if it's a space where we can coexist.
And making memories. I think, I told you earlier, I collect old Twin Cities restaurant menus, and generally from places that I have fond memories of. I think about the Waikiki Room at the old, I think it was the Hotel Leamington, right? I have memories associated with all these places, so cool. Some that still exist, unfortunately many that don't. I think about the Blue Horse in St. Paul, or the Criterion in St. Paul with the popovers.
You are totally.
Yeah, I love it. But
cool.
And the fact that I can remember these, I can't remember sometimes what I did yesterday, but I remember these places because I have memories there, often with loved ones and family. And it's another. There's a more personal reason to keep restaurants open, because they really are they're hubs of memories for not just communities but for families. And everybody listening right now can probably think about that place where their grandparents or their parents would take them for that big night out, a celebration of a graduation or, it could be anything. And that's what's so beautiful about this enterprise and what you do. And it's remarkable.
It allows us
it's a labor of love. And I also know
connects us to our heritage.
Darn right.
And I'm like
exposes us to the world.
Yes. I mean, it really, really does. I freaking named a restaurant after my mom, and so obviously, that's that family ideal too, I think, is super present in restaurants, and so
it's a labor of love to begin with. What many of my colleagues fail to recognize is that even in the best of times, managing a restaurant's not an easy task. Low margins, lots of challenges, highly regulated, challenging, and so particularly challenging in these times. It's not an easy business, but it's an integral business, employs millions and millions of Americans. And from that employment, often many of them become entrepreneurs themselves. Mm-hmm. Nobody starts by owning a restaurant. You start I was a bar back at Runyon's in downtown Minneapolis, one of my great memories. On the weekends, Paul Runyon, by the way, I'm sure some people listening might remember.
Of course, right?
I was, on Sunday mornings, I would go into the bar before it opened and with a buddy, climb ladders, and my job was to clean all the pictures, all the photographs on the wall, because back then when smoking was allowed in bars, of course, they got so nasty every week that just a thick film of nicotine would come off with them. It taught me not to smoke. But I mean, that's how you start, a bar back, a busboy, a server, right? And often the dream is to open your own place, and that's something we got to invest in and cultivate.
Yes, and that's kind of why I mentioned Nick and Dan, and how you help us with these pathways to the next thing, and how I may help people with their pathway to the next thing. That's certain in my job, is that I can get people to consider the passion and the skill that they have and to take a chance on themselves. That's what I'm ultimately looking for. I think a lot of folks in our industry are that, and we're productive, and we add to the fabric of this nation. That is for sure.
Yes, you do. And by the way, it's not, my interest is not limited just to COVID relief, which is imperative right now, but also how do we, and I serve on the Small Business Committee and chair the subcommittee on oversight and investigation, trying to encourage the Small Business Administration to look a little bit more broadly. It should be the provider of services and ultimately capital for entrepreneurs who aren't otherwise connected to money. And some of the greatest restaurants I've ever been to are not the fanciest. They didn't need a lot of capital to get going,
right? But
they needed just enough, somebody to believe in them, take a risk on them. And if you're not connected to investors or the right bank, it's tough. And I think we should, as a country, focus a little bit more on creating self-sufficiency that, frankly, members on the other side of the aisle for me are so focused on. What better way to do it than provide resources to allow people to become independent entrepreneurs?
Yep.
Simple as that.
Yep. Well, we don't want things to crash and then leave no hope for people.
No, that costs more. It
costs way more.
In human lives and in dollars.
Yep. Yeah, just in morale. Mm-hmm. If you find this sense that things are still pretty screwy out there. And I don't know that if that's because I'm a restaurateur or if the rest of the country still thinks things are a little effed up, because things still, to me, feel a little effed up and uncertain.
Sure.
And how do we, corral that feeling a little bit and actually have a sense that, we are going in a direction. I'm not talking just about the Restaurant Revitalization Fund,
sure,
but with everything, how do we get stuff done anymore? Are we really able to get done what we need to?
I think absolutely. That's the primary mission I bring to Congress is that. I still believe in people, and I still believe in the goodness of most people. I believe that we should all serve in some capacity or another. I never anticipated I'd be doing this at this stage in my life, of course, but it's because I believe the country needs more healers and less dividers, fewer dividers, that we all play a role in that.
Yeah.
And you ask if it's possible? Yeah, sure it's possible. But Congress can't mandate it. Congress can't pass a law that says be respectful and decent and kind and caring. Look out for your neighbor. We each can, each of our interactions every single day. Imagine if 320 million Americans just did one thing every day that was a little bit helpful to somebody. Wouldn't that change things? Yeah. That's appealing to the better angels. Our country has gone through a lot over many, many generations and hundreds of years. We're so lucky to be living in this era, in this country, in this community. My goodness, Minnesota. And we have a responsibility to preserve it.
I
We
agree.
really do. And it's not just laws and it's not mandates. It's where's the goodness that it's manifest in all of us. And
Right.
that's I think the overarching message that we have to remind people of.
We need to figure out ways to fight through, some of the feelings that these last couple of years gave us, and kind of ground back on the, hey, do what's right, be nice. How simple is that? That seems simple, Dean.
My father used to tell me, Dean, you always got to turn chicken shit into chicken salad, which is something you might appreciate. And there's some truth to it. We've just gone through a horrible couple of years.
Yeah.
I'm sure people listening have lost loved ones, or certainly know people that have. And these couple of years force us all to take a step back and realize our own mortality, what community means, how important human connection is, because we've all been lacking it in some way or another. And I like to think that there might be a silver lining in this pandemic, in that as we emerge from it, which I hope we are now, that people will take a little bit more of a compassionate view on each other and the world, and try to do better by one another, because that to me will be the determinant.
Yeah.
Not what government does. To the contrary, I think government will follow the lead of Americans, and that's my message.
Even as a manager / employer / whatever I am to my employees, because there's different levels for everybody, but I'm having to lead with compassion first, and it's not always by choice. Like
Sure.
Sometimes it's just like, okay, get it done, let's go. But what I do feel is that we do need to lead with compassion more, and then a lot of people are still struggling with a lot of these changes and being at home and so forth and so on. And again, this elongates the scenario. While infection rates may be going down, we're looking at something that still, I think, lasts a
Sure.
while. And, without some sort of hand, I think it would be hard to keep going.
And that's what we're here for. And that's we've issued a hand. It wasn't as big enough and probably wasn't outstretched long enough, but we're going to try to come back. And I should update you. I'm working just about every day right now on trying to get this done. We've had stops and starts. We have a system of governance that's awfully complicated. It makes change and getting things done really difficult. It's what our founders intended. I think it works a little too well. But with that said, Senator Klobuchar and in the Senate, I in the House, working now with the White House, encouraging them to also take the lead, trying to build bipartisan coalitions to add money to the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, which is going to require over $40 billion. I mean, think about it. It's an extraordinary number if we wish to make amends and afford resources to those that were denied, not because they didn't qualify, but because we ran out of money. It's about 40 billion plus. And by the way, there's gyms, there the live events industry, small hospitality, hotel and B&B owners that literally are dying on the vine and just need a little bit of help. It's not to enrich them, it's to give them a chance. And I think there's nothing more American than that. Give somebody
a second chance.
a chance and a second chance. Yeah.
I hear you, and I know you have to push, because from what I sense as just a regular person is that, a lot of people that work with you want to move on. That they're sensing that we should really focus on the future and kind of the, where does this money come from now? I'm hoping that, how do we, me, restaurateur, with you, how do we keep the pressure on even more? And is there a point where there's no return on this thing?
Well, let me answer your first question, which is how to keep the pressure on. Thankfully, we live in a country still in which we have representational government. We have state and local representatives. We have federal representatives, of which I'm one. And every one of them has a telephone, has an email address, has an office, and receives constituent correspondence all the time. And my message to everybody listening that wants to affect this is let your representatives know. And I've done so at the state level. I have no jurisdiction, if you will, over state resources. Of course, the state has probably going to be over $8, maybe $9 billion in a surplus when this is all said and done. I've encouraged the governor to support small businesses, including restaurants, because money is fungible ultimately, and it is possible, and I think we can do it. But you have to encourage your representative that it matters. And there's not a district or a precinct or a part of this country that doesn't have a cafe or a restaurant that isn't struggling.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it. You pick up the phone, you pick up your laptop, and you write an email and send the message that you need help. And that's what it's all about. And,
Yeah,
and our
it
job
really
is to be proactive. You know, it's not the biggest problem in Washington, Tim, is that, you know, the influence of affluence. Money in politics is such a problem because the money itself corrupts, I would argue. Too often I've seen it. But it's the time, you know, and when members of Congress and elected officials have to constantly raise money for the next election, where do they raise it? You know, you fish where the fish are. You raise it from people who have it and are willing to give it. And by definition, that means representatives are spending too much time with people of means and not enough time with people who are struggling. And we wonder sometimes, where's this disconnect? It's the money. It's the money. Follow the money. You'll understand what the problem is. So it's a responsibility of elected officials, too, to spend time proactively listening, learning, understanding, and doing away with this grotesque distortion of democracy, which is, again, the influence of affluence. You know, you remember, I remember when I was a kid, Chrysler got a big bailout, right? The banks got a big bailout not long ago. You know, the big enterprises, they don't have a problem. They're wired in Washington.
Absolutely.
Hundreds of lobbyists making tons of money. Members of Congress leaving Congress to become lobbyists. But independent restaurants, I'm so passionate about this because it's independent restaurants in particular that don't have that voice, that, you know, that singular voice,
right.
that moneyed voice. And that's why it's our job to listen, learn, and bring that message back to Washington. And that's what I'm fighting right now. I'm fighting against the big lobbyists. You know, the airlines got the money, right?
Right.
You know, a lot of the big enterprises got the money.
Farming.
It's our, and all the time.
All the time.
But these are big businesses. You know, the military-industrial complex, the agricultural industrial complex.
Seems like those two complexes could put together a little program to help restaurants.
Well, we all feed one another, no pun intended.
I mean, that's exactly right. Well, you know, I'm hopeful, you know, again, too, for, you know, what I have. I'm optimistic we're, you know, going to be here and do what we do and fight through it. I feel you, and I understand that you're there for us and working hard on this. And, you know, so I sense that, and I can, you know, put my little podcast out and a couple people can see it and they can say, all right, hey, you know, obviously, you know, from someone in the action that, you know, there's still a fight going on here. And I say that to the restaurant folks too. Keep your heads in the game. Stay sharp. Get out your phones again. Call people.
And go out and eat.
How
about that?
And if you ask for, you know, somebody to, you know, call out and come see you, not that Dean's going to be able to see everybody, but he heard that we were hurting and he's here. And I just really appreciate that. So this is government working with me, and I'm really appreciative of your time. It gives me a sincere connection to the process, if nothing else.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
And it's really good stuff.
I want to remind people to go out and eat. As I've traveled the world and around the country, I see communities supporting their local restaurants and boutiques, frankly, better than we do in this community. And I'd like to see those who live in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota support their local entrepreneurs a little bit more, because that's how this all works. Yeah. And it's actually selfless and selfish, because of course you're supporting somebody, but it all comes back because the jobs you create, the taxes you pay, the vibrancy that you bring to St. Paul, it affects the condo developers, right?
Just the vibe of where you live.
We all are part of an ecosystem, and I think it's a little bit of a humility that we all have to start better understanding. No matter how successful you've been, it wasn't alone. You know, it was because of the roads that, you know, government constructed. If you're a developer and you've succeeded, it's probably because the park across the street or the restaurant across the way or the coffee shop. We're all in it, and we need a little bit more humility from some people who take it for granted. So go out and support your local restaurant.
Yeah. And thanks again for pushing this forward, Dean. I know there's a lot of us that still could use a hand. Thanks for being there for us. Thanks for being here for me.
Always.
Really appreciate it, Dean. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, pal.
Thanks for being on Niver Niver Land.
Keep the faith.
I will. Cheers.
Cheers.